Hi, everyone. Welcome to Between Two Speakers, where two of us speakers talk to people about speaking topics. And today we're speaking with each other. My name is Marianna. I'm a professional public speaking coach, and I'm an instructor of business and professional speaking at Loyola University in Chicago.
And I'm Randy Ford. I'm a writer and storytelling strategist at First Story Strategies. Now, one of the things that I've been curious, I'm always curious to hear your tips on this, Mayor. So this is what I'm hoping you'll talk to us about today is about the audience. And whenever you're going into a speaking situation, what do you need to know about your audience, and what do you maybe not know about your audience in general?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked because this is something I really want to tackle today. I often encourage people to research their audience, and you have to realize with speaking situations, it's going to be a variety. Maybe you've been working with your sales team for 10 years. Clearly, you know what they know. You all have the same business lexicon. But sometimes you're speaking to a college class and you don't know what they know, or you don't know what backgrounds they come from. You might be speaking at a conference, and while you all might be in the same industry, not everyone might have the same frame of reference. That's why it is so important to do my tip number one, which is never assume knowledge on the part of your audience. And I want to be clear with this. This doesn't mean dumb it down. It doesn't mean, you have to start with the basics like, okay, this is a pen. But when you are making references in your material, it's really important to make sure that you're not assuming that either everyone knows the same thing or not everyone knows what you, the speaker, know. And I know I have many examples. I think you had this happen to you once, Randy.
And one that was the most random thing that really was jarring about this for me. I was giving a guest lecture to another class, a class at a different university, and um, I asked just this simple exercise. I gave a writing prompt that had to do with chili, and I had no idea that someone in the room was unfamiliar with what chili was. So this was a foreign student, and it really brought the whole exercise to a stop because his classmates had to explain, well, it's like a soup, it has beans, sometimes it has beans, and it has meat, and it's spicy. And the entire exercise was thrown off. And it's because I assumed just as a gimme that the 12, 15 people in the room would know what this dish was.
Hmm. How did you make up for that, or how did you continue with the exercise?
We redid the exercise and I tried again, and people did know. I think we probably talked about like a cat or something, but we had to redo it. Now, the thing is, like, there was probably no way to prepare for that. Uh,
Hmm.
because you can't make assume all of these things that you don't know going in. But it did take an adapt.
Hmm. What I would suggest for that, and you're right, we sometimes we don't know who's going to be in our audience, but what I like to recommend to instructors is always have a second exercise in your back pocket in case one fails. Because early in my career, I had an exercise that just failed, and I had nothing to replace it with, and I just went, okay, let's go on to the next chapter. And sometimes you just got to hope that moving on saves the day. But yeah, yeah, that's a great story, and that's an interesting question. Does everyone in my room know what chili is? But I guess you learned from it, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So I want to share with you my tip number two, which is strike these phrases from your vocabulary when you are presenting. And these are phrases like obviously, everybody here knows that, or we all know. Because again, this is assuming knowledge on the part of your audience. But what I see happen with these phrases is lots of times the speakers will then follow up with an example or a reference that everyone in the room doesn't know. I'll give you an example. I was presenting to a college class some time ago, and there had been apparently, and to this day I don't know what it was, apparently there was some kind of protest on that college's campus. And the speaker in the room said, well, everyone knows what happened right after the protest, and then continued with the presentation. And I was kind of looking around baffled and I was trying to read from everyone else in the room, like, okay, what happened after this protest? And to this day, I don't know. I don't know if there was a good result after the protest, or if someone was arrested, or the faculty got mad. I really don't know because the speaker had assumed everyone in the room knew about this protest and knew what happened. And maybe most of the people in the room did, but I didn't. And I was very, very confused. And to this day, I really don't know what the speaker was referring to or what happened. And I would have liked to have known because it would have filled out the presentation for me to underscore the point she was making.
Sure. And it may have made you feel, or other people feel, like they were out of the loop, like there's
Mm,
something they should be knowing, they're uninformed. I will tell you that, because I'm a news junkie. I'm a news guy. I'm a politics guy. That's my background.
mhm.
And I, this really bugs me when it happens on the news. And they'll use it almost as filler, but you could see a reporter in DC saying, and those are the words from Congressman Dan Crenshaw. Of course, he's the Republican House member from Texas. Of course, like, makes everyone feel like that is something they should know, and most Americans don't know 435 House members. And I
Exactly.
it to make people feel dumb or uninformed. It's just like it's almost a verbal tick that I think if we're all conscious of when we're speaking, then we're coming across more clearly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, time for my tip number 3, and that is spell out your acronyms. Now, as I said near the top of this talk, the top of this visit, that in certain instances, there will be times when you can assume knowledge. If you're working with the same sales team for 10 years, you all know what a PBM or a PBX is. That's a pharmacy term that was used about 15 years ago. But when you're in a room and maybe there's a new hire there, or maybe you don't know who's in the audience, or in the example of the college you were speaking to, you didn't know if everyone in the room knew chili or not. Don't assume that just because you understand the acronym because you're in that industry or you work for that company or you're at that school, don't assume everyone else knows. Now, I made a big mistake with this a few years ago. I was speaking to a scientific products company, and we were doing a 1 hour long workshop, and I was trying to give an example of speaking and pauses, and I kept referencing NPR. And I assumed everyone knew what I was talking about because this was a room full of scientists. Everyone had a college degree, so of course everybody knows what NPR is, right? Not necessarily. So I kept talking about listen to the speakers on NPR, who's on NPR talking, listen to the pauses. And after about probably my 10th mention, a woman raised her hand and said, "Excuse me, what is NPR?" And I thought, wow, everyone doesn't know what National Public Radio is, but that was me making an assumption that because I was in a scientific company and everyone had a college degree, they were going to understand my references, and they didn't. And that was my fault.
Yeah.
So now a better approach is the first time you mention an acronym, I will say something like, when you listen to NPR, that's National Public Radio, it is mostly news. Give them the chance to actually understand what you're talking about, spell it out, and then you can use the acronym.
Yeah, because the crazy thing about that is it could very well have been that NPR also stands for something that they know in their community that you don't know.
Right.
Uh, it was ringing to them. There's an organization I'm in where we have a group called the NPR, and it's the Nonprofit Relations Committee. And so when we say that, it means something completely different. So
Right.
it's interesting to hear in all of these tips is kind of that fine line of presenting to the audience but without speaking down to them, is
Mm-hmm.
like.
Absolutely. And, the speaking down, we can maybe tackle this on another episode. That's more about the tone and the attitude you take. This is why it's so important to prepare, because when you prepare and you think about the audience and how you want to come across, that actually comes out when you speak. And in any of our examples, using chili as an example, me saying NPR and just keep saying NPR, I don't think our intent was to be condescending, and I don't think our attitudes towards the audience were condescending or mean. It was we were just going with what we knew, and I think we both learned from it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you for these great tips, and thank
You're
you all
welcome.
for another Between Two Speakers. I'm Randy Ford.
And I'm Marianna Swallow. We'll see you next time. Bye
Bye.
bye.